Voices from the Mausoleum is brought to you by the You Run Podcast Network and yourunpodcast.com. And a very special thank you to our Patreon subscribers. Be sure to check out the Paranormal Misfits podcast, your favorite besties fearlessly exploring the paranormal, uncovering enigmatic mysteries, unraveling mind-bending conspiracies, and sharing thoughts on horror. Prepare to be spellbound. Available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome to another episode of our Viewer's Choice episodes, where we did basically giveaway style, gave people some control over episodes and what they wanted to see. We're finally getting to them. It only took like 8 months or something like that, but yay!
Better late than never, maybe?
That's right. And honestly, I feel like we should do them more because I've been having so much fun with them. They've been really fun. But yeah, so tonight we're talking with Paul A. Brooks. If the name sounds slightly familiar, Tom and I covered The Hunting of the Hag, which is a found footage movie that technically, it says 2023 because I guess that's when it was finished, but it just released this year, right? Officially?
Correct. It hit streaming platforms in earlier this month, actually.
Yeah, I thought it was relatively recent. So you can, I'm going to put Paul's stuff in the description for the episode. I'm also going to show where we did the review for the movie, and I'm going to link where you can find it. I'd seen that it was on video, like you could rent it now. And I was like, oh, that must be relatively new because I didn't think it was out yet. Because you did festivals?
Yeah, we did a handful of festivals, and we just played some theaters and stuff like that in 2023, and then signed a distribution deal. And yeah, you can stream it on Prime Video and Vudu and stuff like that now.
Yeah. Yeah, and a really unique take on an in the woods story. So I know Tom and I really enjoyed it, so we definitely recommend checking it out when you get a chance.
Yeah, I appreciate your guys' review, you and Tom's review of it.
Of course, yeah. We big fans of supporting indie horror, and you know how you already know about our love for found footage, so we were excited about it for sure. Yeah.
All that will be in the description.
Oh yes.
That'll all be plugged in and linked and all the stuff.
Yes, all of the places. Yeah. But yeah, so Paul is one of our winners for the giveaway, and he wanted us to get together and talk about The Tall Man, which was actually a film I apparently nor Steve had seen before. And I feel like I'd seen the poster, but I just didn't, I don't know. I just never watched it. But just a quick synopsis. A nurse's young son is the latest victim in a series of small town child abductions, rumored to be orchestrated by an ominous figure known as the Tall Man. This is directed by Pascal Laguerre. I don't know how to say his last name, if that's right. But he should be familiar to other horror fans because he did Martyrs, and he did, what's the other one? Incident and a Ghost Lantern, my two big ones that I love by him. So, but anyway, yeah, Paul, what made you want to talk about The Tall Man with us?
I think it was one of those things where I saw the DVD cover often in video stores back in the day.
Yeah.
In like 2012 or whenever this came out.
Yeah.
And I put off watching it for a long time because I saw the artwork for it. I'm like, well, it kind of looks like a hokey, like just the marketing and the poster art was weird in the sense that like what this movie is not really reflected in the artwork. I don't think very well. Maybe they did that on purpose, but when I finally sat down to watch this, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, it was like, oh, okay, not quite what I was expecting.
Yeah. I went in blind. I didn't watch a trailer or anything.
That's probably the best way to do it.
I agree.
The marketing probably did this movie a big disservice back in, was it 2012?
Yeah, 2012 is when it came out.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I remember, like the poster for it. I probably remember the trailer for it. This is around the time I would have been like, yep, horror movie, go to the theaters to watch it. But I think you're right. It sort of feels like I don't know, like one of those, like almost like the Boogeyman or
Yeah,
right.
Darkness Falls, kinda like,
I
yeah,
don't, yeah, just some
yeah,
sort of cheesy mid 2000s supernatural movie that just was, you know what, we're just gonna pump this out, and if it does well, it does well. If not, whatever, you know.
yeah,
Yeah, I have realized that the movies that I gravitate a lot towards and that have kind of like an influence on me in terms of my writing style and things like that
yeah,
are movies like this that you kind of go in with maybe a little bit of an expectation, maybe you're not sure what it's going to be, and
mhm,
then there's these different takes, different twists and turns going on that really takes things in a different direction. And I've come to understand that excitement from, having a twist that you totally didn't see coming is just one of my favorite things when it comes to
yeah.
this style of filmmaking.
Yeah, because it does that to you twice. There's 2
Right.
major things shifts in the story. There's the one that's not that far into it, like, not quite halfway, and then there's the one that's, like, right towards the very end of it, and it was funny because and just because I didn't say this at the beginning, this is gonna be a spoiler-filled episode, so just anybody watching, just as a warning, it's been out for a while, so we're gonna spoil it and talk about things in depth, but I think Paul, I'd messaged you and I was like, I don't know about this cop. Like, I was like, I don't trust. And then, like, within what, like 5-10 minutes of that is when the first reveal happens with the town. And I was like, I knew it. I knew these people.
Yeah, you texted me that, and I'm like, oh shit, she's in for it. And for about 5 minutes from now.
Yeah, it was so funny because it's the way like they set it up initially. It's like you just kind of buy into the sweet nurse and like I don't know, like you believe that this poor town is really suffering and nobody knows what's going on, and then it just like totally shoots in a different direction after that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting because I think again, based on the cover art, I kind of expected a fairly straightforward story when I started
Yeah,
watching this.
totally agree.
And really there's kind of like a message at the center of it, which I know a lot of people have disagreements about, like there are
Yeah,
people I think who really enjoy this movie and there are people who hate this movie. And I
yeah,
think a lot of that has to do with the message at the center of it.
yeah,
Hmm. Sure.
yeah,
Well, I would say, just from my experience of what Angel was saying before we, I guess, really dive into that message, was like the top of the second act of this movie moved so fast. And I was like, as soon as the kid, I mean, I guess you're going to spoilers, the kid gets
yeah,
snatched by, supposedly we're thinking, the tall man, right?
right.
To her hopping on the truck, to like, I'm like, this feels like an end of the movie, like
I
third
thought the
act, like
same
action
thing.
scene. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what is happening
But the
right
same
now?
thing. Yeah.
And I was like looking at the clock. I was like, geez, okay. And like it just really sets you up to be like, all right, I guess we're in for something really interesting, because we pretty much finished the horror movie section. It changes genres, right? I
Right.
think this
It
is what's so
does.
cool about this movie, is it does genre flip halfway through.
Yeah, and again, defying expectations. There's stuff happening in that section, maybe a half hour into it that feels like the end of the movie, and you're like, if all this is happening right now, what is the rest of the movie gonna be?
Yes. That's so true. And they did such a good job with like, so that scene with the truck happens and he takes her to the diner. And in my head, I'm like, why are there so many people at the diner right now? Why, of all places, did he take her there? I thought that was so weird. And then I started thinking, oh my God, the town is taking the kids, right? So there's like this lag of information, because then we see like what looks like a shrine with her son's picture. There's like this whole lead up of, you're like, girlfriend, you are in danger. And
Right.
then like it just completely, that's when it just like scrambled my brain. I was like, what in the hell? Like it all of a sudden, I'm like, she's the one taking the kid. What is happening right now? And I just don't feel like, I mean, it's shockingly that this came out in 2012, but like it's so hard to find movies that can make me feel that way, like where you're just literally dumbfounded at what you're watching. And then that was when I was like, okay, this is going to be a wild one, because I just did not see any of that happening. It was weird in a good way.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think they do a great job of creating this very tense atmosphere. The production design, by the way, is just gorgeous throughout the
Yes.
entire movie.
Yep.
Somewhere up in the Pacific Northwest, I assume somewhere in Canada.
Probably,
Yeah.
And just the feeling that they give of, the stuff in the diner that you're talking about, Angel, of like everyone's kind of like looking at her a little bit funny, and you're like, what's up with these people?
Yes. Expecting them
stuff.
to like lock her up or something. I don't know. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Also, I'm not what I would call any sort of huge Jessica Biel fan, but
Me
I
neither.
think this is my favorite thing that I've ever seen her in. I think she does a great job in this movie.
Yeah. My favorite thing is Texas Chainsaw, but this would be, I was nervous when I realized when you had said you wanted to cover the movie, and I was like, I don't even think I've never seen that. And I looked at the cover, I was like, oh, this could go either way, but then I think the shockingly, I felt like she portrayed both pieces of her character really, really well. The kind and nurturing, like, person that you want to trust and believe in, and you're like, bad things are going to happen to her, like that kind of thing, to this, like, you were up to some stuff, like, and it was like this whole, I feel like she was able to kind of carry both of those better than I personally would have expected her to be able to do.
Right. Yeah. I would say that her outfit in Texas Chainsaw Massacre is my favorite, but her performance in this one is, I think, because there's so much nuance to it and there's so much,
true.
Depth to it. It's really interesting.
No, that's true.
Yeah, it's definitely cool to see her sort of give it all in this character, because outside of Texas Chainsaw, I can't even remember. Did she have like a big TV series? I'm trying to remember like what she was.
She was on Seventh Heaven.
That's right. Okay.
That was her thing, or first thing.
Yeah, breakout role.
Breakout. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Which I was not tuned into at that.
No, me neither.
Totally missed it.
Me neither. Me neither.
But yeah, no, the performances were fantastic. Her, the actual mother.
Yes, she did a great job.
I thought she was really good.
Yeah, totally agree.
That was a good twist.
Yeah. I don't know. Tell me if this is too spoilery, but I thought it might be interesting to have a conversation about, kind of what the social commentary is at the heart of this movie, which I think some people might not even fully buy into or understand if you're watching this casually. There's a couple different angles to it, but I thought it might be interesting to talk about.
Yeah,
no, for sure.
We're on full spoilers, right?
Yeah, we'll go full spoil. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
How did you read sort of her motivation for doing what she was doing?
So Jessica Biel's character she's a widow, right? Supposedly, and her husband and her were very into. Her husband was like the town doctor, and once he passed away, the town started to go downhill because they lost a factory or a mine, and jobs started to go away, and everything went downhill.
Yeah,
and basically, I mean, you tell me if you guys disagree with this or not, but basically the message that I get from it is her character was trying to give children a better life and breaking what they talk about in the movie, breaking the cycle of children growing up in poverty, children growing up with abuse around them, and trying to get them out of that, and by essentially kidnapping them and placing them in new families, with people who are much more well off in better areas and better financial situations.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much how. So, I mean, it was essentially vigilante human trafficking, right? I mean, which is, it not necessarily something I agree with, you know what I mean? But it's like you could see the rationale, but I mean, I guess that's sort of what makes a good villain, right? Is sort of like there's always a reason behind the villainy, right? Like, there's the, no matter how distorted, right, there's logic behind it. You don't have to, I mean, I'm always curious with people who are sort of like, they hate a movie because they disagree with the villain's logic, but I'm like, but they're the villain. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, you're not mad at Endgame because of what Thanos was doing in Marvel, right? Like,
Yeah, I think it's hard because like I obviously wouldn't want someone to do that in real life to families, but the other side of it is like, you know, I have family members that were not super great to their children and they lost them and they probably should have because there was just no way that they were going to be able to give them. But you know, there's like these moments where she says this one thing in particular, and it's after that initial reveal, you know, like they ask about actually no, it's I think it's towards the end when she's being interviewed after they've arrested her and they're
Yeah.
talking to her about it, and they're like asking about where she kept the kids, and she was like, in a room with toys and books and things that children deserve to have. And she kind of just gives this thing of like, what do you mean, like, duh, you know. And the way that she delivered those couple pieces, I thought, were what really drove home what she believed in and what she was doing,
Yeah.
because she was genuinely giving these children a better life. Like, wrong, right, doesn't matter, because the reality is they probably were much better off. You know, especially the girl from Silent Hill that's in this, the younger, like, well, she's not little in this, she's like a pre-teenage girl.
The one helping her?
Jodelle, whatever her name is, huh?
The one that was helping her?
Yeah, well, the one who, yeah, randomly, yes, that one. But she like her situation was rough. Like
Oh,
her
that girl. I'm
mom.
thinking the teen that was helping her. The old. You're talking
Oh,
about
no,
the
no,
girl that
not
the
her.
drawing.
No, the younger one, the mute girl, the girl that
Yeah.
didn't speak at first. Her real name is like Jodelle or something like that. But anyway, she was also in Twilight. But anyway, she was like, you know, her situation was really rough. Like, her mom's boyfriend impregnated her sister, and then they fist fought, like they would physically attack each other. He threw her over a car, and the mom's like chuckling about it. I'm like, you know what? Please take her away. Like, Jesus Christ, the kind of life that this girl, of course, by that point she's older, so she talks about, you know, and her little thoughts at the end about the life that she can lead versus what she did leave, and kind of the push and pull there because she's older and she remembers. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to have in there too, because that's what happens sometimes when kids get adopted and later in life, or they get taken away later in life. All of that stuff is still there, and it causes a conflict of emotions between the old life and the new life. And yeah, this was chock full. I'm glad that I had time to sit on this before we talked about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what Steve said. You know, Steve, you called her the villain, and certainly I would think that probably most people would agree
Yeah,
with you. But it's almost like, depending on who you are, depending on where you came from, and almost like what your childhood was like, you might have a completely different take
that's
on
true.
whether or not she's a hero or a
Or
villain.
she might be a hero to
And
some kids. Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
it's like, I looked at some letterbox reviews last night, and again, there's some people who just absolutely despise this movie because of what the message is implying, that
Yeah.
maybe children should be taken from their parents if they're in bad situations. And I understand why it's a controversial message. But to me, to rate the movie low just because you don't agree with the message is a little odd to me. I just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like a movie that creates an interesting conversation after you're done watching it. That's one of my
Sure.
favorite things to do after a movie, is talk about, the
Yeah.
various sort of social implications of it.
I
Yeah.
think you're absolutely right. Well, I think there's sort of a kind of a flip side argument in the middle of the movie, right? Where it's like you can make the case for, say, the girl that you were talking about, Angel, where like she's in a clearly abusive situation, to
Oh,
the
right.
boy that she currently has, whose mother fought to take him back. And she's, because I can't remember if there was abuse in that. I think it was just she didn't have.
She was homeless.
She
She
didn't
just
have a
didn't have to provide.
Right.
yes.
Right. So it was like one of those things where it's like, you know, she's asking her is like, well, I still would have given him love, sort of. It's a sort of a
Right.
right. It's sort of this interesting sort of antithesis to the thesis of her kind of point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, where do you draw the line? Here's a mother who clearly loves her child, who
Yeah.
is in a bad spot, but like is devastated when she loses that child. And it's like, if you're going to be a vigilante and do this, where do you draw that line of like, okay, this child needs to be in a better situation versus, well, this child's life might not be very good, but I can't take this child
Sure.
from their mother.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Highlighting that the system is broken, right? That it's not always,
Yes.
you know,
Definitely that.
it's not
Yes.
like the parents' fault per se. I mean, it's obviously the abusive situation, right? I think
Sure.
that is definitely on the parents, right? But like the point she makes is like, who's helping these families?
Yeah.
You
Do
know?
both of you being parents, kind of come at this from a, well, obviously she's the villain type of thing because regardless of the situation, you should never do that to your kid, or is there still kind of a little bit of gray area there for you?
I think right. Yes. I mean, definitely a lot of gray because it's funny, like as a parent, but then
Yeah.
also a social worker, because I'm a social worker by day.
Mm,
I've had to make CPS calls, where maybe they're not. Well, the goal isn't to take children away. The goal is to help the families reunify, or
Yeah.
not even get to that point in the first place. Get them into services that are going to help them in the first.
Yeah.
Um, so it's sort of like there are instances where you need to make that call, but ultimately you want to keep children with their families if it's safe to do so,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think, but it's sort of like for someone to kind of step outside the law and then decide without kind of due process who gets to lose their children and not.
Hmm.
That's sort of what makes her very tough for me to sort of be like get 100% on board.
Right. That's
Yeah.
I didn't know that about you, that you were a social worker, so that kind of makes this a perfect movie to talk to you about.
Yes.
Actually, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think for me it's probably great too. I kind of like a different perspective on it. So short story time, when I was 21, I went through the court system to get custody of my sister. My dad got custody of me, my biological from my biological mother when I was very young for drug use, violence on the home, a lot of really bad stuff. And so as then she had another baby. And so then that child, which was not my father's, couldn't be helped because her dad was the same as our biological mother. And so I had to go through the process of getting her. And I remember how hard it was to go by the process because the process did not care about her or her safety or what was going on in the home, nor did they care about what my experiences were or the fact that my biological mother had another daughter that she lost custody of. Like they didn't care about any of that because the process is you keep them at home where it's easier. The people are overworked. There's not enough resources. They don't have enough houses to keep these kids safe. So they end up overpopulated in really bad situations. And so having been someone that had to go through that, like I literally had the defects officer, whatever they're called, show up at my job and tell me I had to take her back. And the only reason I didn't is because I got a guardian ad litem, which works for the court system, which trumps defects. And that's the only reason that I was able. And that was through a connection in the county because I knew the coroner who worked with Columbia County, or the county that I was in at the time. And so having been through all of that, this is a quicker method of removing children from like dangerous things. And I have to say, like, I don't know how many people really thought about this, but she couldn't have children. And I
Right.
think to me, as someone who I would have been devastated if I hadn't been able to have mine, and the way that changes kind of the way that you look at other parents and the way you look at the way children. And I think that that's actually, even though it's only mentioned one time, I think that's really important to her as a character, her motivation, her reason, how she's able to just do this relatively guiltless. I think that spoke a lot to me. Now I'm fortunate. I was able to have a child without a lot of complications, but it was just one of those things where I know people who really couldn't. I know people who can't. I know people who've struggled to have. And so I really just felt like I really more understood, even though I have a clear understanding of like, okay, this is wrong. This is not okay. But also it's
Right.
helpful. I don't know. Like it's definitely still a gray area for me too.
I had no idea picking this movie that both of you were going to be such experts on the topic. Holy cow.
It sort of ended up being perfect, man.
That's perfect.
Wow. But you're right. I mean, that's part of, a big reason of her explanation in the movie when she gets caught is the system is broken. This
Yeah.
the cycle needs to be broken and no
Yes.
one ever does anything. And you can tell that she's passionate about it, obviously.
Yeah.
It's just it's comes down to kind of a matter of perspective and whether or not you agree with kind of the extreme measures that she's taking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she and her husband, because that's the other twist we didn't really talk about, that he really is alive.
He's essentially, he is the tall man.
He's the tall man.
Yeah,
Yes.
that they've sort of that they are the symptom of sort of the bigger issue, right? Is like, they wouldn't have to exist in the role that they're playing if the system worked the way
what it's
it
supposed to
should,
do.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And you find out at the end that they're really just one cell
Oh,
of a much bigger network.
yes.
So you could do something interesting. You could like make a limited series out of this or something, if anyone
Yes.
wanted to do something like that. I feel like there's more room to explore there.
Make a good like Showtime show or
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. And I loved the whole because again, completely blind, didn't read a synopsis, nothing, just went in and watched it, right? I was surprised that they had that until obviously later when we know what's going on. There is that question of am I going to see a ghost figure? Am I going to see a shadow man that shows up that torments kids? Where is she just work for him? There's all these things. And I thought it was really interesting the way that they kind of fed into that with the small town thing and it being this lore created around something that essentially was true. They just didn't realize, that what it was obviously to that extent. But I really love that because I kept waiting. I was like, am I gonna when is something like that gonna happen?
Right.
And it's I bought into that, and then it ended up not being the case. But I thought that it worked really, really well in this, really well.
I think that's exactly what it comes down to is this is what I was trying to say earlier. You expect at some point that something supernatural is going to start happening, and it never does. But I think they may have even set up the marketing in that way to get you to expect that that's what's going to happen and then pull the rug out from under you. Which, if that's the case, if they did that on purpose, honestly, kind of genius. I just feel like there's some people who, because it's not really a horror movie. I mean, there's some horror elements to it.
Sure.
But it's really more of a psychological thriller. And I just feel like there's probably a lot of people who don't realize that.
Yeah. And it's a lot of people, you don't go into a movie on the promise of maybe there's a twist. Sometimes. I think we do. Right. But we talk about the general audience.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's sort of like they see this sort of ghost-like figure. I've seen a million of those. I'm going to skip this one.
Sure.
Yeah, and so you're kind of not making anybody happy because if there's anybody at the video store, again, back in the day, renting this because they think they're going to get a boogeyman type supernatural thing, they don't get that, and they probably are not interested in what the movie is.
Yep.
So it's I find a lot of aspects about it fascinating, but it seems like it was probably a really tough movie to market.
It's probably bored a lot of 12-year-olds at a sleepover.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
That. Yeah.
That's probably those 1-star reviews. Probably some angry 12-year-olds.
Yeah, because to your point, Paul, the cover art for this really speaks to a spooky entity. But then when you see the movie, you go, well, she's standing the way she is in front of it because the two things are connected. It's she's not necessarily the tall man, but they're on the same plane of existence, right? So the cover makes more sense, but I think they probably could have done something different to kind of convey more what this was supposed to be. Because I think there's definitely some super intense moments where you do feel like you're watching a horror movie, but then I think one of you said, and it kind of switches genres and it goes just straight into the psychological thriller side, which plays really well with horror, I think, as a subgenre within the genre. But it was just, I don't even remember a trailer. I'm telling you, I don't remember anything about this movie other than I knew I had seen the poster. That was it.
Yeah, I don't think it had any sort of theatrical run or not that I remember. I think it was just straight to video in 2012, and I always saw it at the video store, and it, I would say, oh, that looks, kind of whatever. And then when I finally watched it, I'm like, what the heck is this?
Yeah. No, it ended up being really good. I actually did really like it. And I know we talked about the performances. I think the kids in this, the little boy that's in and out a little bit, because we see him, in multiple different pieces of the story. But and the girl that plays Jodelle, the girl that played the older kid. I think she did great, even as a child who didn't speak, like the way she carried herself and was trying to communicate and the things she was asking. Like that scene when she's on the porch and she's like asking her to like call him. Of course, at that time, we still don't know that him is like a real person. We're still thinking like from another realm, right? And so when she's like begging her, I'm just like, oh my God, like she'd rather go to this unknown, crazy, who knows what, right? And then like have to deal with the shit she's dealing with at home. And I just like that part got me. I felt so bad. And then she tells her, she's like, he may come, he may not, but you may end up wishing he didn't. And you're just like, what? What's happening to these kids?
By the way, I'm glad you said that because I wanted to make sure I mention that this is a movie that I think has a tremendous amount of rewatch value. You can go back and watch it knowing all the twists, and you see it from a totally different perspective when you rewatch it.
I bet.
Pick up all the little hints and all the
they're all there. You know, you see it totally differently.
Yeah, because one of the things I started to think about, and this is just kind of piggybacking off of that point, is that like, you know, when when the mom of the little boy is like, oh, you know, like I saw him in your window, and I was thinking about like the scene that we get of them and how cute they are playing together in the house and all that, and you're just like, oh, how cute. I was like, yeah, we never saw that kid anywhere but other than inside that house. And it's things like that exactly like what you're saying. When you go, because I would definitely rewatch this. If I go back and rewatch it, those are going to be things that I'm paying attention to that I didn't, necessarily pick up on the first time.
Jessica Biel will say, I love you, David. He does not say, I love you, mommy. You know, little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I tried to figure out what their dynamic was. And then I was like, you know, she comes into the house and there's the other adult that's there. I think she's an adult. She looks like an adult to me. And you know, so I'm like, okay, maybe it's her kid. And like, maybe after her husband died, like now they're apart. I don't know. Like I couldn't fit. They did a really good job of keeping that like super ambiguous.
Right.
So that then when you.
Uh-oh. Did we lose you?
You guys do editing on this?
We will have to now.
My port came out. Am I okay now? There we go.
Yeah, you're back.
Where did I stop? What was the last thing y'all heard?
You were going like this.
Well, you're saying you were figuring out the relationship.
Yeah, because I couldn't figure. Steve, you got to edit this one just because. No, I'm just kidding.
Paul was asked, do you guys do editing? I was like, well, now we do.
We don't always have to. No, I think because I'm so animated, because I'm excited to talk about it, I'm shaking my stuff and my Ethernet port came out of my thing. It's already pretty loose. It doesn't just hang out in there sometimes. So anyway.
You're good now.
Yeah. Anyway, I was trying to figure out the relationship. So like we knew that her husband had died and she didn't talk about having kids before. So I was like, okay, maybe it's this other girl's kid and they're now dating or something. There's got to be like some kind of story, but they did a really good job of making it ambiguous so that when you figure out what's going on, you're like, oh my God, like, you know, that part was really, really well done storytelling wise.
Yeah. I just thought maybe she was a babysitter or a helper in some sort, or her sister or something.
Best friend. Yeah. There was so many possibilities. And I think they knew that the audience would know that there were so many possibilities. It could have been a number of things. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that it sounds like both of you enjoyed this because I wasn't 100% sure if it was going to be the right type of thing for the show, since it is a different kind of movie, but it sounds like both of you enjoyed it. So I'm happy to hear that.
Oh, well, yeah. I'm super open-minded for most things.
more so than me, I would actually say. He's like we just had to do, what was the one we just did? Sleepwalkers. And Steve's like, I loved it. And I'm like, that was a weird movie.
Stephen King movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's maybe not his best, but I enjoyed it for what it is.
Super campy. It's like early 90s, like everything looked foggy. It had like that Twin Peaks look to it.
Mansionamic.
And Mansionamic is in it, exactly. I think it just sort of added to the vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's always a vibe.
Yeah.
It was one of our, like, it was another viewer choice where, like, our friend Lexi was like, I want to talk about this movie with you guys. And I'd never seen it. And I went into it blind, which is also, I would recommend doing that for that movie too, because Jesus. But yeah, it was, yeah, it was, we just did that one. But yeah, Steve's a lot more, he's not as hard to please, I think, as I am when it comes to movies.
I like
I'm
weird
way
crap.
more picky. Yeah. I'm a lot more pickier, but we've gotten him into found footage now. So he's like way more into found footage, which is always a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's drank the Kool-Aid. So now he's like been diving into some found footage, which is good. But yeah, it's no, I really liked this. I was like, going into it, I thought, okay, what could this possibly be about? And then the first twist hit me, and I was just like engaged. You know, that like sometimes I can still like a movie, but I'm like periodically checking my phone or something, right? This was not like that, because once that first twist hit, I was like, I've got to make sure I'm paying attention to this. Like, and I stayed like that until it was over. Like, and then it was just like one of those things where, like, you know, when you watch something and afterwards you're like, damn, like you got to like take a second. That was me. And then I couldn't stop thinking about it for several days. I was like, I got to think about this to be ready
Yeah,
to talk about
that's why I really like it, because again, there's good rewatch value to it. It makes you think. You can have a conversation with friends about it if you watch it with other friends. On top of all that, it always looks great. It looks like $1,000,000. I mean, it doesn't look like this was a cheap movie to make.
I agree.
It's not like a
Yeah.
low budget movie or anything. So even if you're not, even
Yeah.
if you don't agree with the message, even if you're not 100% on board with the story, because it's a little slow in some spots, I always thought that the cinematography and everything looked really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a beautifully made movie for sure. And
Yeah.
I don't think the budget was very big at all for this one.
Yeah, I would be curious to see what the budget is, if
Yeah.
how much they stretched the dollar on this, you know.
Because, like, you know, you get a good camera, you know, you have someone who's competent behind the lens. It's like, it's going to look good, you
Right.
know, or you spend time on really good color grading and really good, you know.
Just that area too, it just looks so good out there.
Because this came out before Martyrs, but
I don't think so.
is it after both of them, after Incident and Martyrs?
Incident was like 2018, so this is definitely before that.
Jesus.
Yeah, I looked it up today. But Martyrs I thought was 2008.
So
you're right. The remake
Martyrs,
is 2015 for Martyrs.
Yeah.
That's right. The American one is gross.
I know, because I watched Martyrs in 2010, and I said I am never watching that movie ever again. So because it was too much for me. So I think it's interesting that, like, he did this movie and there really isn't any of the gore or anything from Martyrs at all.
No.
Yeah, and I think he plays really well with psychological horror, even in gore settings, because that's more like, I agree completely. Martyrs is a gore fest. It gets intense fast, but it's also very psychological. And Incident in Ghostland is like another one where after you watch it, you're like, I have no idea what I just watched. And it took me days, because I watched it to do a review for another channel, and I was like, it's first of all, it's super heavy. All of the movies that I've seen by him are heavy in content. And I would say this one is too, but it's presented, I think, in not as dark of a way. Like, it's obviously got some dark moments and some concepts that are dark, but overall this is presented in a much lighter way than some of the other stuff he does.
Thematically challenging, not like shock challenging.
Yeah. And so the budget for this is 18.2 million.
Okay. That's about what I would expect.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's super small though, right? That would be like
small compared to like what typical Hollywood is, right? But this is French Canadian. I have no
idea. The only budgets I ever look up are found footage movies, and those, you can't compare those to, like, you know.
I mean, budgets have definitely been ballooning over the last handful of years, basically since Marvel started doing stuff. Things have gotten really out of control. But in 2012, for a movie to be made in 2012 at 18 million, that's actually, you know, decent chunk of change right there.
Oh, yeah. And this says Martyrs is 2.8.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, yeah, but even look at like something as simple. I know you mentioned Marvel, but like I was looking, so Zendaya's new movie it's about the actors, right? Because Zendaya just did a movie. It's a tennis movie for
Yes.
50 something million.
Yeah.
For what?
A tennis movie for 55 million, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's a tennis.
They must have had some big paydays.
Well, the thing is, Zendaya is the big name to it, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
like, it's the star power is a lot of these big ballooned budgets now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait to stream that one.
My husband's actually going to see it right now. Or he's
Yeah.
wrapping up.
I think I have friends going to see it right now too, actually.
I
Yeah.
do want to see it really bad because it's supposed to be raunchy.
Oh, because this
I
is the one
hear
where she
that.
has like the two boyfriends. Is
Like
it that one?
Throuple
Okay.
situation.
That's right. I couldn't remember. That's right. Yeah.
You know, the kids these days. I bet if young people tried to watch Wild Things these days, they wouldn't know what to do with themselves.
That's probably true. That's probably true. Yeah. The budget, I don't think about like what to compare that to in Babe, but it seems like it's like you can usually tell where the money goes, right? Like if you're talking about like The Haunting, for example, from 99, one of the things that like Scott and I talked about when we covered it on remakes was that like the budget had to have primarily been the acting. And that was like, that's where all the money went, because at the time it was, Catherine Zeta-Jones and Liam Neeson and Owen Wilson for some reason. And so those people at that time, that was a big deal to have those people in movies.
Right.
And so, but it's always interesting to see like where those budget things like that for the bigger production companies, where it goes, because they didn't have a lot of big names in this. Obviously Jessica Biel. The only other person I recognized is the guy that plays the tall man.
Oh, I wasn't.
Oh, and Jodelle. I knew her too.
Right. Well, I recognize that the sheriff was the smoking man on X-Files.
That's where I knew him from. Yeah. I couldn't figure. I was like, this man. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you got that.
Okay. I got you.
And then just for me personally, I really like John Mann, who played. He's one of the guys in the diner who like busts into the bathroom to go after her, and he throws a rock at the car later. He was on Battlestar Galactica, and he was in a great B movie called Turbulence 3 Heavy Metal. He plays like a metal singer in that. If you guys have never seen Turbulence 3, please check it out at some point.
Okay.
Who was he in Battlestar?
He was in the pilot. He was the commander of the air group. So spoiler, he dies in the pilot. He was in the pilot.
It's the original attack by the Scions, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So it was just the one episode, so that's why I didn't recognize.
Oh yeah,
him.
I didn't.
Are you a
Battlestar
fan, Steve?
Oh, I mean, I watched the sci-fi series. Yeah,
he dies in the first attack when the Raiders first show up and they kill all of the engines. We're so way off topic.
Okay, not really. The person that played.
We could talk Battlestar another time. I love the series.
Yeah. He passed away a couple years ago, so I always like to mention him because I think that he seemed like a really interesting and nice guy, and he didn't have a huge career or anything, but if you saw him in something, I always thought that he was a memorable actor in the stuff that he did.
Yeah, I just didn't recognize. I mean, I felt like there was a decent amount of people in it, especially because of the scenes like the diner and stuff. But I just didn't recognize any of the other ones. Like I didn't recognize the one mom that was being hit by the boyfriend. I didn't recognize the boyfriend. Like the mom of the little boy that Jessica Biel's character had. Like I didn't recognize her. It wasn't as like, like jam packed. Because I think once we started getting into like outside of 2005 and we started like moving forward, we started like the way horror was done was just kind of different. And I guess maybe too, because this is Pascal, is that his name? The guy that did this? Pascal
Lugiere.
He's definitely done things that are definitively horror, and this kind of is a little bit outside of that. So there just wasn't a lot of like, super big names, but
they don't pack horror with A-listers as much as like, they used to sometimes, but
Stephen McHattie was in this. I've seen him in others. Stephen McHattie, I've seen him in some other stuff. I wonder if they probably have to have X amount of Canadian actors in this in order to meet some sort of requirements, since it was shot there.
To film in
Canadian
Canada.
Actors Union. I don't know.
Yeah. Probably.
I'm sure there is one. I just don't know what.
No, there is. The Stephen that we interviewed for Murder, Madness, Mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that came on with Riley.
Oh,
He lives in Canada. He's done work with them
Canadian.
before. I've heard him
Gotcha.
talk about like having to pay, like, because you have to do a lot to be in the film, to like do stuff in film in Canada. There's like a lot of some hurdles, I think. So I think that's true. I think that's a real thing.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm assuming all those kids on Degrassi are in an actors union. You know?
Yeah. But no, I really liked this. And I'm glad that you wanted us to talk about it, because I may not have made the time to watch it otherwise.
Right. Yeah, I love recommending movies like this to people where it's like kind of a hidden gem, something that maybe not a lot of people know about. And I feel like if the marketing maybe had been done just a little bit differently, it could be like a minor cult classic a little bit.
Yeah.
I would love to see if this, had a resurgence at some point. Maybe maybe we can convince a few people to watch this.
Yeah, to go check it out.
We're going to start it.
We'll start the
That'll be-
trend.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. No, I really liked this one. I'm glad that we were able to watch, because like I said, I'd seen the poster. I know I passed it, but I kept giving it up for the same reasons you said, Paul. It just looked like one of those cheesy summer horror movies with, I don't know, but it wasn't. It was really good. So
Yeah.
if you're watching this and you hadn't seen it, and we just spoiled everything, go watch it anyway.
Can't believe you made it this far.
We gave the spoiler warning, so
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, I think that's gonna wrap up this episode for our review of The Tall Man with Paul A. Brooks. Just a reminder, he is the writer-director of a found footage movie called Hunting of the Hag. I always worry because everybody messes up voices. They say voices of. I'm always worried I'm going to say haunting from instead of. Like, I keep worrying I'm going to mess it up. I don't think I have. I think I've done okay.
No, you got it wrong.
Did I?
Yeah.
What is it?
Hunting for the hag.
For. Oh my God. See? For, of, and from. For. Hunting.
From, of.
Words are
For.
hard,
From.
man.
The hag. The important thing is we really liked it, and I'm going to put links below so you can go check it out for yourself. If you like anything in the woods, if you're a horror fan, if you like found footage, it's going to check a lot of boxes. So highly recommend checking that out and giving Paul a follow up as well, so you can see what he's up to when he does his next hopeful found footage movie.
Maybe. We'll see. We're talking about that right now.
Cool. Well, I'll be crossing my fingers and toes. So, cool. Well, thanks again, Paul, for coming and hanging out with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And thank you, everybody, for watching and hanging out with us as well. Hope you have a good rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you in the next one.